And thank you very much to Ambassador Surinder Kumar for inviting me to this distinguished panel. And really, it's a pleasure to be on the panel with such luminaries. Now, I am the last speaker today, so I think if you follow Shashi Tharoor's analogy, I have two options here. One is perhaps to say everything has been said, but not by me, or disagree with everyone. But I think we're in much too polite company, but also I actually don't have fundamental differences with what has been said. But I think what might be useful is to try and raise a few set of questions and perhaps try and deconstruct what may be the logic behind this sort of transition that we're starting to see in foreign policy. Now, first of all, all of us witnessed the longest and perhaps the biggest election ever in the world. And yet, we would have been very, it would have been fair to say that none of us would have thought that foreign policy mattered. There's a couple of points that Shashi Tharoor mentioned, but beyond that, there was no reference to foreign policy. And yet, foreign policy is absolutely fundamental to the future of this country. And it's quite clear, you can already see that the new government, even around the time that it came into office, has been confronted by a series of international challenges, moving from TTP to TPP. Now, the TTP, of course, is the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan and the terrorism challenge. But the TPP is the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is very important for the trade and future dimensions of the country. Now, India and this government will have to address both these set of challenges and all the acronyms in between if it really wants to stay on target of becoming the world's third largest economy by 2025. So what I plan to do over the next 10 minutes or so is essentially the following. One, to sort of outline what is the priority of the Modi government, and we've heard this already, I'll just reiterate that. What are the objectives which are required to carry out that priority? And third, what are the set of sort of challenges? Now, it's quite clear that I think the primary objective of the Modi administration is development, with an emphasis on investment, infrastructure, and jobs. This we know, and here there's a tremendous amount of continuity with the past. Now, this objective, if you want to carry it out seriously, requires two external conditions. One, you need a no-war environment in the immediate neighborhood, or at least a reduction in tensions, even if you don't improve relations. Second, you want to create a global regime which actually supports your economic growth and provides the necessary kind of impetus that you would require. And I'll elaborate that a little further as well. So today, India really faces a set of opportunities, but also a set of challenges. And that's particularly true of the Modi government. And how they explore that and use that opportunity and address those challenges is going to be critical. Now, there are three systemic challenges which, in achieving these two conditions, one of a no-war sort of scenario, and second, to ensure that the global regimes are supportive of the Indian endeavor. And these challenges are, first of all, the lack of capacity, and I'll expand on that a little further. Second, the difficulty of making peace. And third, the inability to use multilateralism effectively. So let me try and elaborate on the external conditions. Now, clearly, everybody was pleasantly surprised by the initiative Prime Minister Modi took in inviting the heads of SAARC countries to attend the swearing-in. And this, I think, reflects his desire to create that no-war environment, to reduce tensions with neighbors, but also enhance economic and trade ties. And here I completely agree with what Gurcharan Das said about the most favored nation. I think one reason why it could not be offered and accepted was because India also needs to reciprocate within the SAARC context. And that's something that, I don't think the government was ready to do right then. But that's something which might happen later on. But there's another element to this which is important to keep in mind. And that is that, Prime Minister Modi could actually invite the SAARC countries because in a very long time, for the first time, they are all now democracies. they actually do have legitimate leaders who can be invited and actually do represent their people. And I think that's an important dimension and shift. And the second element is, why did they all accept? I think there are many reasons why they accepted, but I think one of the factors is that they also have bought into this idea of having a no-war scenario to try and enhance their own peace and security and trade and economics as well. But as we've seen, on the same day that Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif accepted the invitation, the attack on the Herat consulate showed that there are going to be groups and non-state actors and others who will try and challenge this particular approach. And that's going to be one challenge for the Modi government to address. Let me turn from there to the global scenario, what the Modi government needs to do to try and enhance that as well. And here, really, what the government needs to do is to shape the rules in the emerging global norms and institutions. Why? Because they have a direct impact on India's own future at the very fundamental developmental level. And in fact, developing multilateral norms and institutions in at least the following 6 areas are absolutely crucial to India. And as I list them, I'm sure they'll resonate. 1, climate. 2nd, cyber. 3rd, energy. 4th, food. And just to give you an illustration of that, the Indian food security bill is actually contradictory to India's sort of commitments to the WTO. And so, you clearly need to work either with the WTO or with your own sort of establishments here. 5th is space. 4th is space. 5th is trade. And here, of course, the tension between the WTO and initiatives like the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and how do you bring the two together. And last is water. Both trans-border rivers, but also oceans, and that's a critical, element as well. So India really has no choice but to engage on all of these evolving issues globally, because they all impact on its domestic future. So clearly today, India is very much poised, both in terms of opportunities and challenges. And here, let me try and start unpackaging some of the challenges. Today, India is already the world's 10th largest economy and is stronger and more capable than it has ever been in the last 500 years. I'm looking back at 1500. India's status is not only recognized, but institutionalized. It has a seat on the G20, increasing clout in the international financial institutions, and is also a nuclear weapon state, and impressive peacekeeping credentials. And today, geopolitical shifts have also provided opportunities to India. However, there are fundamental lack of capacity. And this is where I want to sort of focus maybe our discussion and attention on as well. First, India's per capita GDP is not only the lowest among the G20, it is even 50% lower than the next lowest country, which is Indonesia. So it's an extremely, extremely low level. Second, only 3%, about 3 crore, of India's 1.2 billion population pays taxes. And the total tax revenue collected is, again, the lowest among the G20, right? And finally, India's foreign service, of which we have, at least 2 very illustrious members here, with 900-odd diplomats, is again the smallest among the G20. Given the kind of range of roles that India is expected to play, there's a big disconnect between these two. Now, India, clearly, if you're looking at a IPL or cricket or football analogy, India is fielding less than a full team when you go into the field, playing field. And that's an unequal playing field to begin with, and the big challenge that we have. There are other challenges, and that is, there is an assumption that diplomacy and a negotiated solution is, of course, preferred, and that's something that India has always argued for, but there's an assumption that it's also easier. It's not. In fact, one could argue that making peace is much more difficult than making war. And it requires more diplomatic capacity than India clearly has at the moment. And so one of my concerns is, how is the initiative that Prime Minister Modi has led with inviting all the SARC members to his inaugural going to be followed through? Does India actually have the capacity to follow this through? Because as we know, the devil is always in the detail of the treaties. Now, let me turn from there to effective multilateralism. Now, here again, in the arena of multilateral negotiations, India has neither initiated nor signed up to a multilateral treaty. I'm almost done, but I'm tempted to carry on to get the red rose. Thank you. India has neither initiated nor signed up to a multilateral treaty since the mid-1990s, even though these treaties would actually have benefited India's own outlook and India's own objectives as well. And there is a perception, and this may be wrong, and perhaps this will come up in the discussion, that India uses the multilateral forums to advance its principles rather than its interests, whereas it should probably try and do both as it does. Now, however, the one opportunity that India has not used, which has been afforded to it, is the G20. And here I completely agree with Ambassador Mansingh about, it'd be very interesting to see how the Modi government looks and uses the G20. And for me, an important marker would be whether India, in his tenure, hosts a G20 summit. I think that would be a very important indication of how seriously India takes that. So to conclude, let me end by saying, by successfully addressing these systemic challenges, India will not only serve its own interests, but also that of the emerging global order. The question that I leave you all and the panelists with is, will the Modi government be able to accomplish this? Thank you.